There's been public reporting that Jeffrey Epstein showed people photos of President Trump with half-naked young women. Do you know if the FBI found those photographs? You don't know anything about that? Okay.
I really do think the Epstein file situation is probably the biggest thing. It's the biggest cover-up. It crosses, I think, partisan lines. And the guy in the White House is the number one person who doesn't want these things revealed. So I want to dig in deeper for the latest developments. He was asked again about Ghislaine Maxwell. This is not an old video.
President,
say it.
The Supreme Court is back, and they rejected today an appeal by Ghislaine Maxwell to overturn her conviction. That means her only chance of getting out of prison is a pardon from you. Is that something you're?
Who are we talking about?
Ghislaine Maxwell.
You know, I haven't heard the name in so long. I can say this, that I'd have to take a look at it. I would have to take a look. Did they reject that?
She wanted to appeal her conviction.
And what happened?
They said that they were not going to hear her appeal.
I see. Well, I'll take a look at it. I will speak to the DOJ. I wouldn't consider it or not consider it. I don't know anything about it. So, but I will speak to the DOJ.
Why would she be a candidate for clemency, sir?
I don't know. I mean, I'd have to speak to the DOJ. I'll look at it. I have a lot of people who have asked me for pardons. I call him Puff Daddy has asked me for a pardon.
But she was convicted of child sex trafficking.
Yeah, I mean, I'm going to have to take a look at it. I'd have to ask DOJ. I didn't know they rejected it. I didn't know she was even asking for it, frankly.
These are lies. Donald Trump, first of all, doesn't even have the mindset to even lie about saying he does want to give Ghislaine Maxwell a pardon. Caitlin Collins had to ask him again, by the way, we're talking about, in case you haven't heard her name in so long, as he first started saying, in case you forgot who she is, you know, she's Jeffrey Epstein's right-hand woman, and it was a part of this whole child sex trafficking ring, that thing you keep covering up, you know, that thing. Would you be willing to think about giving that person a pardon? I'd have to talk to the DOJ. I got to talk to you. It's a possibility that we could release one of the most notorious child sex traffickers ever. Even, you know, crazy people like Laura Loomer. This caught her eye. And it's because I strongly advise against anyone lobbying the Trump administration and the DOJ to pardon Ghislaine Maxwell. Do not do it. I repeat, do not do it. There will be no coming back from that. I repeat again, for the love of God, do not do it. And then she mentions Donald Trump, J.D. Vance, and Pam Bondi. She knows the three people that she's supposed to make sure knows that her message is loud and clear from, you know, Laura Loomer, the unofficial advisor to Donald Trump, who makes decisions for him in the White House, tells them, don't do it. Don't you dare. She wants to tell the advisors. Don't forget, what she started with was, I want to strongly against anyone lobbying the Trump administration. This is what keeps happening. It's what I talked about with Marjorie Taylor Greene and anyone else who has something to say that actually makes sense about something, is they never put the blame on the guy who's running things, the guy who says, I have ultimate and extreme power, the guy who says, anybody who comes to me and says something I don't like, I'm going to fire them, all the way up to these generals that they invited a week or so ago to go and lecture. This guy, somehow, we're going to go ahead and every time you find him in one of these corners, you have to say someone's advising the president wrong. I would advise the people who are advising the president not to let him continue to run roughshod. I would advise people not to advise Donald Trump to be an authoritarian fascist. I'm just saying, maybe just outside chance, Donald Trump is the authoritarian fascist. There's an outside chance Donald Trump in those Epstein files is covering up the Epstein files because he and a lot of his buddies are implicated in them. I'm just saying, all these declarations and character changes of somehow someone's supposed to think that Laura Loomer gives a hot damn about whether or not Ghislaine Maxwell gets pardoned. It's more that she's worried about how bad this will make them look. She even said that too. We can't come back from this. I mean, we've come back from all the rest of the shit that they've caught us doing, but we'll never be able to come back from this because it's disastrous. Someone should give that memo to Mike Johnson because, again, he's falling apart because he has to keep trying to defend this madness.
Your latest move, you announced this week that the House will not be in session until the government reopens. But there are still things that you could be doing. There are appropriations bills that you could be working on. There's a new Democratic congresswoman who still needs to be sworn in. Isn't there still critical work that you could be doing on behalf of the American public?
We're doing that critical work. Let me just start by saying I listened to my friend Hakeem there, and When we used to do debate competitions in high school, they taught us to watch out for the red herring. The red herring is a distraction. Literally everything my friend just said there was unnecessary, because what he's trying to talk about is a December funding issue, the health care provision, some of these Obamacare subsidies that expire December 31st. He is looking over entirely the fact that we have to keep the government open in order to have those bipartisan debates and discussions that he just referenced. The simple CR that we passed in the House more than 2 weeks ago does exactly that. It is a clean CR. It's only 24 pages in length. It's the simplest thing that's ever been done, and it's exactly what Chuck Schumer and Hakeem Jeffries and all the rest of them said must be done. You saw the tape. We could roll that tape for hours. All of them saying this passionately as recently as earlier this year, that we had to keep the government open in order to do our job.
Mikey, the question was, why haven't you sworn in Adelita Grijalva, who's that last vote on releasing the vote to make sure that they release this petition for the Epstein case files? Ironically, he said it's a red herring, as he then went off and talked about everything else as a distraction to what it is he doesn't want to answer. And you know what? Surprisingly, I was actually surprised, so I'm going to share it with you guys too. That she actually asked him again and told him he's not answering the damn question.
There is, Speaker, still critical work, though. And as you know, many Democrats have looked at your move. They say the House is not in session because you don't want to swear in this newly elected senator, the Democratic Congresswoman from Arizona, who would be a critical vote to releasing the Epstein files. How do you respond?
It's totally
to that
absurd.
charge?
This has nothing to do with that. It's another red herring. The reason the government is closed is because Chuck Schumer and 43 of his Democrat colleagues in the Senate have decided now to vote multiple times to keep the government closed. We need them to turn the lights back on so that everyone can do their work. The House did our work. We passed a bipartisan, clean, continuing resolution to keep the government open. And what did Chuck Schumer send back in response? His counterproposal would add $1.5 trillion in new spending for a simple 7-week stopgap funding measure to keep the government open so all these appropriations bills can be finished. And they want to claw back $50 billion that we put in for rural hospitals to prop them up. They're not serious. This is not a serious negotiation. They're doing this to get political cover because Chuck Schumer is afraid that he won't win his next reelection bid to the Senate because he's going to be challenged by a Marxist in New York, because that's the new popular thing out there.
Mike Johnson's afraid to talk about why he's not swearing in Adelita Grijalva. He still didn't answer the question. Instead, he went on that same tangent. He thinks this is the winning argument. That's what their meetings and their emailing has been about. Every time someone brings anything else up, you just blame Chuck Schumer because, Democrats don't like him. I mean, younger Democrats don't like him. And also make sure you say that they're the reasons behind all this, and then spout some of those lies you have about, the bill that you passed and the things that you've destroyed. He mentioned that $50 billion that they put towards rural hospitals. Do you guys remember this talking about rural hospitals and how they're closing because of the cuts that this bill made?
We were there as workers covered the emergency room signs at Midcoast Medical Center in Trinity, Texas. The closure, hospital officials tell us, was driven by the same factors that have closed other rural hospitals. Low reimbursement rates from elderly patients' Medicare and Medicaid coverage, which made up most of the hospital's budget. Hospitals in urban areas get significantly more reimbursement from their patients who have private insurance, which tends to pay more. Republican proposed cuts to Medicaid could leave more than 8.5 million people uninsured and force even more rural hospitals to close. A new report finds almost 750 rural hospitals are at risk of closing.
I remember it. So if they're trying to put in $50 billion, and it sounds like such a huge number to save rural hospitals, someone should ask them, why do rural hospitals need saving? Mike, here's more of that reading that you'd have to do. Medicaid provides health care for millions of people in rural areas, and it's vital to keeping rural hospitals financially stable. The recently enacted Republican mega bill, which would cut, here's a big number, $1.1 trillion from Medicaid and Affordable Care Act marketplaces over 10 years, threatens the health of rural residents and the economic viability of these rural health providers. So in response to concerns from senators representing rural states about the adverse effects of such massive healthcare cuts would have on these rural communities, the mega bill created a $50 billion 5-year rural health transformation program. But as CBPP and others warned during this debate, a temporary fund will not mitigate the harm to rural communities caused by the deep and long-term healthcare cuts. So there's this number. It's this is big one. 1.1 trillion. It's with a T, and they want to put in 50 billion with a B to say that that's going to save rural hospitals. The worst part is it's a lie from the first place. That $50 billion that they said would save rural hospitals still isn't even enough, because obviously part of the whole thing that they're taking away is in the trillion of dollars. But you know what I didn't know was happening today? I want to make sure we keep it here, because I almost let Mike Johnson get my mind off of where this whole thing started. This whole thing started with them covering up the Epstein files and Pam Bondi's only job, which is to carry out Donald Trump's orders and cover up this huge scandal. But his distraction was to get away from this question about the Epstein files. Pam Bondi was sitting down talking to Dick Durbin.
Read somebody that you mentioned I never heard of.
Reid Hoffman.
So who gave the order to flag records related to President Trump?
To flag records for President Trump?
To flag any records which included his name.
I'm not going to discuss anything about that with you, Senator.
Eventually, you're going to have to answer for your conduct in this. You won't do it today, but eventually you will.
Pam Bondi's not going to answer questions. She's being sat down to answer questions about what is it they're doing. So as we already know, a bunch of Department of Justice employees were put on scouring through the Epstein files and flagging every time Donald Trump's name came up. And all Dick Durbin asked was, who authorized that action? Who took them off of actual jobs that they could be doing? Who took them off of protecting the American people? Who took them off of cases that were actually going after other criminals in order to make sure they cover for Donald Trump's authoritarian fascist ass? I'm not going to answer that question. After a long pause, the bad thing about that very revealing moment is that it wasn't even the worst one. Here she is talking to Sheldon Whitehouse.
There's been public reporting that Jeffrey Epstein showed people photos of President Trump with half-naked young women. Do you know if the FBI found those photographs in their search of Jeffrey Epstein's safe or premises or otherwise? Have you seen any such thing?
You know, Senator Whitehouse, you sit here and make salacious remarks, once again trying to slander President Trump left and right, when you're the one who was taking money from one of Epstein's closest confidants, I believe, I could be wrong, correct me, Reid Hoffman, who was with Jeffrey Epstein on multiple occasions. And the senator sitting right next to you tried to block the flight logs from being released. Yet you're grilling me on President Trump and some photograph with Epstein? Come on.
The question is, did the FBI find those photographs that have been discussed publicly by a witness who claimed Jeffrey Epstein showed them to him? You don't know anything about that. Okay.
Damn. Like that's really bad. So it's her obvious deflection didn't work. Well, Senator, what is it you've been doing? Hey, yo, if Senator Sheldon Whitehouse is in them, man, get his ass. But that's not even what she said. So all you have to do is have enough focus to not let them deflect and run from something else that they think is going to cause people to go, oh my God, we can't think about this anymore. Ask her the question again. And she sat there silent, scared. She's like, didn't work. Now, if I say anything that's based in reality, or if I actually point out that, yes, I did see photos of Donald Trump with naked young girls in these files, he's going to get me. You see how scared she was? You guys see, I want you guys to see like what she looked like. I just want you guys to see her face after he asked her again. That's her face. That's her face. Scared as shit. This is the main thing they do not want coming out.